right, awesome. Welcome to the Mr. Bill podcast. I'm interested to chat with you. I'd never heard of you before. Your PR people hit me up and it sounded interesting. Like some of the stuff you're doing sounded really interesting. So I'm interested to chat about that. So from what I understand, you're a classical pianist and you do a lot of stuff where you take like contemporary music, like you've done Nirvana and Pink Floyd and stuff, and you kind of remake it as if like I think you did like Another Brick in the Wall as if it were made by Liszt and stuff like
Yes,
that.
exactly. Yeah.
And then you also have been using AI in classical music compositions as well. So I'm interested to talk about all that. But I want to start with, like, I'm just not that familiar with classical music. I'm on I produce music, electronic music, and I'm like very much a contemporary musician. So I'm curious, like, how would you describe classical music, and like what values does it have that you think differ from contemporary music?
Right. So there is actually two definitions that are kind of different. So overall, classical music refers to all of the, like eras in total, just in terms of like a stylistic, like in terms of stylistic qualities. For example, the instrumentation, but actually there is a academically truer version of what classical music means, and that is actually like the classical era, so the music that was composed during the classical era. And so there, I just wanted to make that differentiation before. So when I talk about classical music, it actually is more the general reference to the style where there's even electronic. It's really hard to define, but basically like the historic music that was created from all the way, like the Western classical music, from Gregorian chants all the way up to like contemporary classical, which is like Steve Reich and John Adams and all the current living classical contemporary composers. So I would say, first of all, there is an academic value. There is also skill set. So the way that it's being composed and also what the instruments are being used. Although that has changed a little bit towards the end, like where you could see like a fire alarm in an orchestral piece, or like a toy duck, for example. Like these is like the very, very contemporary classical stuff that we're talking about. But there is basically a really like sophisticated composition process where it's almost like architecture. So if you ask someone like what is classical architecture, they're going to tell you a few things. So what I do is I specialize in each of these eras, and I apply the compositional elements that were used by, let's say, Johann Sebastian Bach. Like he's very well known for like counterpoint and his compositions in the Baroque era, where they kind of coined. They were the masterpieces of his age. Basically, he invented even a few things that were very new. So each composer that we know about, like Beethoven, Chopin, Liszt, they innovated within their own time periods. But just generally talking about like classical music is usually like piano, orchestra, and then stylistically and compositionally, there are very, very specific things that make it classical. But I would need to kind of get into all those specifics with you, like from the tonal centers and or if it's atonal, then there's a whole structure to it, and like there's 12-tone music there. So there's a huge variety of actually genres within classical music as a whole. Yeah, but that's a really good question. I think it varies from person to person what makes it classical. But for example, I wouldn't say a cover of a Coldplay song is classical. That's not classical. It has to have its own like high art form where there has to be like a really much more than just the straight away like transcriptions for it to be considered classical. So it would need to be in the style of, let's say, like Mozart or Chopin or whatever it is. But also, if it's like a new classical thing, that it would need to be transcribed and arranged in a way that it does sound classical. The way that we work with melodies, themes, it's so much more complex than just playing straight like the same notes. You know what I mean? It's just like a deeper level of music. It's like a high art form. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I've like talked to a few people over the years who are classical musicians, and every time I like probe them and ask them questions about it, like what is it that makes it classical and stuff, it always seems to come back to like it's mostly about playing pieces of music written by like these same 20 different composers who have been being replayed now for like hundreds of years. And it's really they explain it to be more like about taking the shit that they wrote on paper, like the thing that they transcribed, and like reimagining it as closely to what they wrote down as possible, basically. Would you agree with that to any degree?
Kind of. I mean, because they were innovators of their age. So I actually would say that it doesn't necessarily have to sound like one of those composers if it is classical, but each era has its own specific stylistic, or like, for example, Romantic era, you have to have a melody and an accompaniment in like for piano most of the time. And there is like, it's all about expression, and for classic era, it's like it's not as expressive, or I mean there's expressive parts, but it's not as romantic and crazy like take your heart and step on it. It's not like that intense. And there's different forms of conveying emotions in Baroque era, for example. Like it's more about the harmonic, how the harmonies change, and not necessarily about being emotional but through the melody, but it's more like multiple melodies could be like I mean you could have a very, very emotional Baroque dance, for example, but it's not going to be like the Romantic era at all. Like, so they're very distinct styles and formats for each specific era. So you don't necessarily have to compose like a composer, but you could compose in the style of an opera, like a Bellini opera, like bel canto, or you could compose music in the form of a sonata form in the style of classical era. So like these all have like certain architectural formats. So you would need to follow those rules to make that piece work in that genre. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I I kind of feel like every genre of music is like this. It has its rules and it has its tropes, and people follow those rules and those tropes to make whatever genre they're trying to make. But I feel like classical music is just more honest about it. A lot of like other genres, I feel like they try to pretend that they're being like endlessly creative. I feel like classical like knows that that's what it's doing. Which I kind of like.
Yeah, I don't know. I think just the depth is different. The depth is, you can have a piece of classical music that lasts like an hour long. Instead, it's just so much more. I have to say, I'm being like a purist right now. I love all genres, but I gotta say, you cannot compare that to like a 3-minute pop song. Like there's no way. It's like one of them, you need like years and years of experience and written, like it's literally like building, let's say, a whole cathedral, like a Gothic, like, you know what I mean? Like it's like very different than a prefabricated house that is just like printed on the street. Like it is, like, yeah. So there's like this whole skill set that goes with it too. Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think that writing pop music is really hard, I think, because you would think that if it wasn't, that any classical person who just wanted to make a bunch of money would just write a top 40 pop song like a couple of times in their life and set themselves up with a mansion so that they could just do what they love all day, which is classical,
I think most of them do. You
Really?
would see that they're classically trained. Yeah, most of the really like ABBA's songwriters are like really like very well classically trained, and the Radiohead same way. Like there's many people who are actually classically trained. Like Jordan Rudess is like an amazing keyboard player of Dream Theater, and he's also classically trained. So yes, some of them do. Yeah.
Yeah, I had him on the podcast actually about 2 years ago or something. He's awesome. He's a great dude.
Yeah.
So when I was preparing for this, I was reading some of the past interviews you've done, and you expressed in one of them that modern classical music can sometimes feel like lab music, like overly technical and not emotional. How do you navigate that in your own compositions?
Yeah, I don't really use contemporary style to compose because I don't think it's tonally, like I just am more oriented towards tonally centered music. if you know what I mean, like if it has a tonal center. So with some of this like 12 tone music or even like atonal other genres, like you just can't hear it in the sound. I mean, it looks nice on paper, like when you start analyzing it theoretically, but it's not something where I would want to go to a concert and listen for 2 hours straight. Maybe if it's like one or two pieces, that's fine. And I think it's really like opening your senses, but I would need to then prepare for it totally differently, like analyzing the piece beforehand, and then really like, you have to like do the research before you enjoy that kind of genre. Whereas if you just go to like let's say Johann Strauss concert, then you'll just enjoy it rather like without knowing anything about the music. So there's like different experiences I think you expect from certain composers, and that really is up to what type of person you are and what type of experience you want from that specific day and event. So, but overall, I think there is really a huge kind of intellectual area to research on, and I think AI is going to really like be like doing some really, really sophisticated stuff in the future for us. Like, because music is mathematical if you think about it. And there is patterns. And the thing is, like, we're just very, we're simple human beings after all. Like, we enjoy similarity. We enjoy like some adventure, but not like to an extent where like, it's like so crazy. Like there are like Zeneckis is one of examples, like where he writes really, really crazy stuff. But like, I mean, I haven't heard his music being played aside from like colleges. It's like it's interesting. I think there is like two survival, like not survival, but like two ways for music to survive, and most of it because it relies on stage and public opinion. I think that's like a big risk. So if you're trying to survive as a composer, you also have to think about who your clients are, right? Like who's going to be your audience, who's going to actually buy tickets to pay for it, right? So I think, but when you get more into this kind of other genres like 12 tone or like contemporary other genres where it's like more experimental music, then I think that option kind of closes for you, and like you can only maybe perform to a certain niche audience who's like very curious and adventurous about that genre, and they want to learn more, but it's like a really, really tiny fraction. So yeah, it's like a whole different world. But I think because it's more, some of the concert music is much more mathematical. So I think AI will be able to create new ways to compose and then really apply formulas to music where it would take a lot less time to create a composition, and it could make a whole mathematical sense. And I can totally see that happening.
Yeah, 100%.
Like music of like particles or genes, or like it just like apply formulas, like super complex formulas to notes, and then like create something out of that. Like I'm very excited about that. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, the AI stuff in music is getting crazy. I've been messing with it quite a lot for electronic music lately, where you can just basically like start writing a track, and then you can put that track into something like Udio or Suno, and you can say extend this, like write a section after it or before it, or make an intro or make an outro, and give it like prompts. You can't, I don't think you can write in like artist names, but you can write in like genres and vibes and stuff like that, and it does a pretty good job. It actually, in my opinion, does a really good job of string parts. I always feel like all of the string libraries that are available, like all the Contact ones, sound kind of cheap and shitty, but honestly, some of the AI string parts that I've been able to generate, I think, sound pretty decent.
Yeah, because they're trained on actual audio recordings, not MIDI. Yeah.
Well, I think the Contact libraries are like multi-sampled, right? Like they'll record.
Yeah, but it's like note by note, unless you get the ones that are patterns, like which are actually pretty good, like the loops, So if you buy those, yeah. But I think the fact that you play those essentially on a keyboard makes it not good enough as
it doesn't have like the proper articulation between notes and stuff like that. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So classical music, it's had a long tradition of being associated with certain intellectual or cultural elites. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a shame because that was not really the case for the composers themselves. It was more for the people who were enjoying it. So I think if you look at history, like composers were always people's people. Like it's like if it, like Mozart, for example, like was I think one of the actually he was the first one to really want to get away from the royalty, like the whole like and he did that. He basically got out like how can I say, like he declared his freedom and then died and nobody knows where he died, and he was drunkard. Like it was just like he just died in such a bad economic condition. And it, it's just like in those times, the rich class really rules everything. So they didn't really have a say. And most composers were even treated like almost like servants, entertainment servants, where they would entertain the king or the queen or the aristocracy, and they would be paid. And it took a long time, and it was Liszt. I mean, he's really inspiring. Franz Liszt was one of the first people to actually be categorized not really as a servant to the rich people, but actually as a superstar virtuoso that those rich people would want to like even like go to the concert of. And like he would like there was a huge class difference. That's unfortunately like that's the case where Liz was like, I'm as important as the aristocracy, if not more. I'm the superstar. And he like invented the piano recital that we know today. And he also would tour with his van and go everywhere. And he did like fundraising concerts. He also transcribed all these like symphonies of Beethoven and Wagner operas to piano, so that poor people who had no money to go to these big concerts could play them in their homes. So I think it's funny to me that nowadays, like people associate classical music with all the elite and rich class, but that's like not at all true for where it actually came from, which is all these composers who were literally like being paid to write to all the rich class. So I think in a way though, like that allows those composers to create such amazing works of art, because I think arts definitely need patronage, some sort of patronage system where either you need like an infrastructure or the government funding or some sort of like some income source so that you can actually make your art without worrying about having another job, right? So I think that's how it worked back in the day, and I think we're still struggling with how to adapt to the modern culture while protecting the artists. So that's like a whole other conversation we could have. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that it's tough to balance artistic integrity and doing exactly what you want to do with the thought of, well, I also need to pay rent and I don't really want to take such big risks, because if I do, then that may not financially benefit me in such a way that I can even do the stuff that I want to love, because then I'll need to get a job and such like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
How do you balance that in your creation?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's hard for sure. I think I found a few sources of income where some of my income comes from live performances, some of them come from brand partnerships on social media, and some of it comes from royalties from my music being used in TV shows, for example. So I'm just it's like and what else, like, and then corporates, like I perform for corporations sometimes, or I do speeches, so that's really nice. So but I feel like in the last couple of years, most of my life really depended on video creation. I became more of a videographer than a performer, and it was like really sad to see that. Just because I didn't have time to compose or to actually practice and play the piano. I was spending so much of my time editing videos for people to then, because social media is such a big part of being an artist nowadays, which is a shame. I don't I'll be honest, I don't like it. Like I don't want to be like making things for other people all the time and like live streaming my life. I'm more of a private person, and it's hard to get your work out there if you don't do it. And you always then have to think about, oh, how many people will like it, and like like which angle, and like, do I look good? Is the lighting good? Is like, it's just so much like that you have to worry about. It causes a lot of anxiety for me. Yeah. So I actually kind of took a break for the last couple months, or maybe a year even. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I have all those same anxieties about all those same things. And yeah, it's really tough to like, to figure out like how to balance that. I try to like intentionally do some stuff that I think will make money, like make a bunch of dubstep so I can go play it at festivals and stuff like that. And then I do enough of that plus like educational material that it kind of buys me hours to like do whatever it is that I actually want to do.
The passive income is a really good source. I mean, that's
important. Yeah. What do you believe the role of classical music is in today's society?
I actually feel like it's becoming more and more important because we're advancing so much in technology that the information that like any historic artifact and any historic information should be like really valued that is made by humans, because I think more and more we're going to have like AI generated content. Already like 2023, I think, is like literally like up to that point where like you could definitely make sure everything is human made, but from then onwards there's so much AI generated stuff on there. So I think classical music fits into that part where we have to protect our history, our own human history, and it's never gonna die. Like it's I think there's so much use for classical music anyway, like from film scoring to to live performances that are like imagine symphony orchestra. So like in my mind, actually, like, the Fifth Element movie, like there was this like alien singing in the ship, and I think that might be like how the future concerts will look like, and we'll always need some sort of like a sophisticated symphonic work and a really cool like experience. But probably it'll merge with electronics and more non-traditional instruments, I think. And also the players might be robots. That's my idea, is like, I think like maybe non-humans will also play. And I think that's why we have to just really protect, because I think already technology has been starting to be used in commercial music, right, for like a long time now. In fact, Berio was one of the first classical composers to start using electronic music, and then when all of these things came, it was actually the classical composers who used it first. All these new tools and new for example, Steve Reich has a piece called Piano Phase, and that's really interesting. It's like all these new concepts were tried out by the classical community first, and then they were adapted by like groups like Radiohead or or prog rock groups. So there is already this transition from traditional to non-traditional, like more experimental instruments. And I think maybe it could be a nice way to like make that distinction of like, where did technology, like what is technology anyway? Is piano a tech instrument? Like it is definitely a technology that was developed, but yeah. So it really depends on how you define what technology means too. But I do feel like everything that was made like up to the point of maybe the first use of electronic instruments is like, it should be considered like historic artifacts. I don't know. It's like really important for us to prove that this is what humans are capable of doing.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
Do you think a concert where you would go to see like robots play a piece of classical music and they just nail it, it's perfect every time, would be as cool to watch as a bunch of humans doing the same thing?
No.
What is the difference there? Why do you think that?
I think people go for the human experience. The thing, actually, I have a theory about that. Maybe AI will go to that. Like, I mean, if in the future, if we have like cyborgs or like some sort of like AI robots, then maybe they will go to their own concerts, and that might happen, because I also I don't know if you saw the movie Her. Have you seen it?
Yep.
Yeah. you know how like in the end, the AI like operating system, she just ends up hanging out with other AIs because they're more sophisticated. You know, like they're like growing faster. It's like a human cannot like progress as fast. So like I think there might be this new genre of music where AI builds its own music and then they just listen to it themselves. I don't know. But for humans, I think there has to be a human element involved. Even if there is robots, I think it has to be some sort of like a combination of the two. But of course, if there is like a few shows, like for example, like ABBA has someone was talking about this, the hologram show, right? Like, and they're not there actually singing and people still go and pay tickets, ticket money to see it. And apparently it makes like $2 million a week or something. Kind of crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, so like,
insane.
I mean, that's more like a thing you see one time, I think. But you wouldn't like go to a concert like that every week. I don't know. I mean, I don't even go to like big concerts now. Like I only go to specific ones because you have limited time and you want to see something. Like for example, I've seen so many classical concerts in my life that when there's like another Tchaikovsky concerto, I'm just like, you know what? Like I've listened to this like hundreds of times already from my favorite, pianists, and I would rather go see something different that I haven't seen before. So, it depends like who your audience is. Obviously I'm, in my 30s and like, I'm open to new experiences, but you could be in your 70s and maybe you want to just hear the same music that you grew up with. So, I mean, depends, right? There's going to be an audience for each. Mm-hmm.
For sure. For me, it's about the fact that it's possible to fuck up something that makes it interesting. For example, like if I were to go watch a classical concert, the thing that makes it impressive to me is that they don't fuck it up. Like they play this like extremely complicated thing, and especially if you already know how difficult that thing is to do prior, and they start to do it, you're like, holy shit, are they gonna get it? Are they gonna get it? And then they get it and you're like, oh yeah, they fucking got it. But like,
yeah.
I feel like with AI you don't get that. Like it would just be perfect every time, and because it doesn't even have that risk of fucking anything up, it just kind of seems like it loses some of the awe.
You could program it to be different each time too, which I feel like that's the thing where like it just gets like, because everything we imagined AI would be is like, oh, we imagined like AI wouldn't be emotional, and then here is like all these AI generations that are actually very emotional because it's trained on human data, right? So it's really interesting. I think like we probably also don't know what it will actually do yet, like what are the capabilities, but absolutely. I mean, I think it's similar to watching the Olympics. Like let's say like I was like so obsessed with Simone Biles like the last couple of weeks, and I was watching all her performances, and I was thinking like if there was a robot doing that, I would not watch it. Like it's just not like, I think there is some magic about seeing the human form like doing its full capacity, like or like even like being at the edge of like of its capacity, and like even like doing things physically that other humans aren't capable. Like that's a whole new level of I think expertise, and people really love seeing that. It gives inspiration and hope, and also I don't know, there must be some other hormones that come to our brain when we watch such an amazing person doing ridiculous things like physically, like that you thought wouldn't be possible before. So I think it's a similar effect probably. Yeah.
I wonder if they masked all the robots in human skin and they got like indiscernible from a human, like you couldn't tell the difference, if you would still get that sense of awe, or if that would actually disappear.
That's such an interesting thing. I gotta say, that might actually be an interesting thing for humans to watch. Like, it's just because I think we're weird in a way where we're like our brains associate with things that have a face on them, or like at least like some sort of like there's a name for it. I think anthropomorphosis or something like that. I forget.
Pareidolia or apophenia.
Yeah, no. But have a look at. I think it's called anthropomorphosis, but it's basically like where you start feeling an attachment to an object, where like you start talking to it or you relate to it, and so like if I were to say, hey, like this book is like my friend, you would think I'm crazy, but then if I put a smiley face on it, and then you'd be like, oh, that's cute, right? Like, and I would speak to it, and so or if I make it like kind of talk to me like this, like when I'm speaking, then you're like, wow, like, and I've seen this like, there was a guy who brought a robot dog to one of the tech conferences I was at, and it was a freaking robot. I mean, who cares, right? Like, but then as soon as the the robot started doing these like little dances and like dog-like things that were really sweet, immediately my brain was like, oh, I'm so worried about this. Like, why is he using him for entertainment purposes? And like, poor robot dog, robot rights. Like, suddenly, I mean, like, I started caring about robot rights. I mean, like, it's crazy. Like, and I think there's a lot of movies about this too. If you watch like AI, like artificial intelligence back in, I think, 1990s, or was it 2001 or something? It was like Spielberg was directing it. And Jude Law is in it. Like I rewatched it just recently, and I was like, damn, like it really is. It even like most of the movie is more about caring for a robot, like that you feel sorry for and you feel an attachment for, and it's like long past when humans die. Like it's like, it goes on for like hours after humans are even not even in the movie anymore, you know? And so I don't know, we form attachments to objects. So yeah, if they're in the right shape or form, I think you're right. Like if they had human skin or some sort of faces and they had emotional, like kind of things that we could relate to. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think people would want to watch those. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there definitely is like some tests or like some studies that have been done on AI, like regarding the Turing test, which is like a test I think as to where an AI can trick a human into thinking that they're talking to another human. And I definitely get this with ChatGPT. Like when I talk to ChatGPT, it feels like I'm talking to like a really smart person. But I think that this is more of a testament to how easy humans are to fall in that way, rather than how sentient or person-like the actual AI is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we're interesting creatures. I think the more we are going to experiment with all these AI tools, the more we will learn about ourselves.
Apparently, it becomes exponentially easy to trick a human into believing that an AI is a real person if it's a man and if the AI is pretending to be a woman.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
apparently it makes it like extremely easy to trick people into thinking that they're talking to a real person in that specific case.
Oh, interesting. I need to read more
Oh,
about
I think
that.
it like has to have some romantic component to it as
Oh,
well. But yeah.
I see. There was a movie about that. I forget the name, but that was kind of creepy. Where this super genius coder um had a house in the forest. It was like, and he was building new types of AI, and then he wanted to do the Turing test, basically. And
Oh, Ex Machina.
yeah, I think was it that? Yeah. Was that the name? I feel like yeah, that was the name. Yeah, and then you see like the rooms with like they can see each other at night and they speak with each other. With the guy who's his employee who wins the chance to go and visit his work. I feel
I
like,
think
is
it
that the
might
one?
be this. It might be. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but then it was creepy in the end. Like I'll just spoil it with it. Like he was making them like for sexual pleasure too, and it was just like all these like robots with like different women's skins. I don't know. It's like creepy as hell. I don't know, but yeah, it's a really interesting topic. I think it'll make us learn more about ourselves for sure. It's a really interesting era we're living in.
Yeah, 100%. So I want to talk about some of the contemporary blends that you do with classical music. Um, so some of the work that I saw of yours on YouTube, it involved taking like existing contemporary music, like a Nirvana song and a Pink Floyd song,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of remaking it as if it were like another composer, like Liszt or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. What inspires you to do this, and what is your process like for doing this?
The first one that I did with Pink Floyd was because it was Liszt's 200th anniversary, and I really love Liszt, and I was reading his letters and his biography, and I really was like, oh my god, like why are people playing Franz Liszt's works as in such like a formal and such like restricted ways? Because this guy was like he would take pop melodies, like pop as in like whatever was popular in his time, and then he would transcribe them to sound like amazing piano pieces. Like it could be a song, it could be a poem that he saw and he made, like, there was so much of his work, and the way that it was being experienced during our time wasn't really giving it justice, I thought. So I was like, this dude was a rock star, like, one of the first rock stars in history of music. So I want to do something that's innovative. So why don't I try merging his music with Pink Floyd's melodies, so as if he was alive today and it was transcribing. So I applied a few of these compositional elements, like that he's very well known for. For example, he can take a theme and chop it in parts, and then he could reuse those parts and motives in either the same way, or he could stretch them out and then change the harmony like below it, and then he could bring them back in like short chunks, or he could bring the entire thing back. It's so interesting what he did with all these motives, and he also was the literally the creator of program music. So before his time, people would, there would be like symphonies, for example, but then he was like, I want to write an orchestral piece of music and I will call it tone poem, and it'll be about a story. So it's almost like film score. Like he was the first one to really associate a narration with music, to go hand in hand together and tell a story. So, there were so many other things he did too. And I was thinking, like, Pink Floyd did this concept album, like they really came up with this new form of music listening. And I thought that was similar to tone poems, where like Liszt was also going after this effect of like combining all the movements in one, and then you have to listen from the start till the end without any breaks. Like in normal symphonies, you have like four movements generally, and you have breaks in between, and like it's a whole different format. This one was based on a story, and you go from first till the end and hear it as one piece. And concept album is very similar. So I was like, I'm going to make a concept album where you start from track one, and then you listen to the entire album, and it will have all these evolving stories within. And those stories were like alienation. So philosophically, they matched too. So, if you saw the Wall movie, you will see this, the prime character. He has like a lot of issues. He feels alienated. There's, of course, all these like other parts where it talks about like consumer culture and war and bad education system and all those things, but the protagonist is really like having love problems, and so did Liszt, and also they both had like this issue of being super popular, and they really wanted to build a wall around themselves. So there is a time period where Liszt literally escaped this whole commercial world and then went to nature and started composing and didn't want to see humans. Like, so I think it was interesting for me to explore like not just compositional elements, but also philosophical elements of this so-called romantic hero. And that was the beginning of it. And I guess once I started playing around with these themes, I really enjoyed rewriting pieces of music that also was meaningful for me, not just like covering them. I was never really interested in covers. Because I think, first of all, you can never really beat the original. It's never going to sound as good as, very, very few, especially if you're not singing, right? So, it's not going to match the original. And also, like, that should not be even your aim. I don't think, like, trying to match the original should ever even be something that an artist should be considered. It's more about, like, finding your own voice and your own style and creating something new. So, I was like, well, I'll recreate Pink Floyd music as it was written by Franz Liszt. So that was the first step, and it went viral. And so it opened a lot of doors. I had just graduated from Royal Academy, and I didn't know what to do with my life, essentially. Like, the academia doesn't really prepare you for a real life at all. And so this was really interesting that a progressive rock group was the reason why I started touring internationally. Kind of crazy. Just think about it. Like, and so that made me more brave. I would say. And so I gave myself the right to then experiment more. But then at one point I was like, why don't I just compose my own stuff? Like, why do I even need other people's melodies, or music? So then I took some time off to like focus on my original music, and I moved to LA. And now I'm doing all of those things. Like, I want to compose more, but I wouldn't want to necessarily sound like Mozart or Chopin or Liszt. Like, I want to sound like myself. So my original compositions are very different than what I have done previously, like performing classical. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of classical musicians don't write original music, right? It's like they spend their whole life just playing stuff from like 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Why is that?
Crazy. I think that's nuts, because that was not the case during those times. Like, all of the composers we mentioned were brilliant performers too, and they always perform their own music. I don't know why like, I think it's the modern education system that kind of split the two, and that is just crazy to me, because like how, like, I mean, okay, like there's arguments about how you can be creative as a performer, but like, there's like, you still can only be creative within certain rules. And those rules are so strict. You have to play the same notes and the same, like whatever the composer wrote. So like, actually, I think like if you're just a mere, like just performer, it's not at all creative, in the sense where you would compose your own music. So, yeah, it's crazy to me. And then a lot of composers don't play well, so then they need other people to perform their music. So I just blame the education system for that. It's a shame.
Fair enough. How was the reception for the Pink Floyd one, for example? Did you find that Pink Floyd fans didn't like it and Liszt fans did like it, or did both people like it, or did Liszt fans not like it, Pink Floyd fans did like it, or like,
it's interesting. I think so when I was working on them without it being viral, like before all of that happened, I was just in school, and I was I remember my first lesson. I actually brought it to my professor, and he was like the head of keyboard department for 25 years. I mean, it's crazy. So like this guy is like this like super established, like amazing professor for classical music, and he judges all the competitions and all that. And then here I am like bringing him like a Pink Floyd Listified arrangement, and I literally thought he was going to kick me out of class. I mean, I was just so scared of like the reception from him, but he was so nice, and so like he like basically he stopped me in the middle of it, and I was like, oh my God, is he just going to tell me to stop playing? And he's like, move over, I'm gonna like, where's the guitar part, let me try to play it. So it was amazing. I think first of all, like it's whoever you have as like the first person of contact and of respect that you have, like their reaction really matters to you somehow, and so that was such a big relief. I was so lucky and grateful to have him as my professor. And then once I like, because if he had shamed me or had done something where like, if he had looked down on it or something, I think maybe this would never even have happened. I don't know. I'm very sensitive to those things, especially if they come from people I really admire. So that was the start. And then some of the students were like judgmental. They were like, oh, why are you doing this? And like, even some pianists, they were like, what's the point? Are you trying to earn money? I was like, it's not even at all. Like, it was literally part of my master's project. So, there was no other intention. And also I just thought nobody would ever listen to those anyways. It's such a nerdy thing. And like, if you want to be popular, then you just add pop beats to it. Like that, like it's just not at all what I was doing. So it was just as a nerdy master's project, and I had put them on SoundCloud, and a progressive rock magazine kind of discovered it, and they wrote about it. And then after a week, it was just like viral. And this happened like after I graduated. I mean, it was sitting there for 2-3 months maybe. And then, it just kind of snowballed from there. And once Pink Floyd shared it, and then all my friends were like, oh, we love it so much. And like, everybody changed their perspectives on it. And they're like suddenly like asking me to play them. And like, and then not everybody, but like a lot of kids started imitating. Like they wanted to do something similar. So whenever something becomes popular, everybody wants to do it. And so I realized who were my real friends and who weren't, like, during that phase. Most of the Pink Floyd fans were amazing. Actually, I don't think I've even gotten any bad comments from them who have listened to all the tracks. Like, they're very open-minded, and I think it was like a perfect mix because they're kind of in their, well, actually, they're kind of older now, so they appreciate classical music, but also grew up with prog rock. So it's just like, and they're open to new ideas, and which is what Pink Floyd was doing, and which is what progressive rock is all about too, right? It's like incorporating different elements and being open-minded and not expecting everything to be like the same. So for that, actually, it was brilliant, and I was getting messages from them all around the world saying like, "Thank you so much. We didn't know about Franz Liszt, and like you introduced us to classical music in a different way, and like we started playing piano. Like there was a couple who renewed their wedding vows with my Pink Floyd arrangements, for example, and there was a guy whose dad had a brain surgery, was a Pink Floyd fan, and then he wanted my signed album as like a gift for recovery. And then I actually knew all these people by name at one point because it was such a nice community that we achieved. And I know that he got better, for example, like after a couple months, he was feeling a lot better. So like, it's still nice to connect with them when they come to my concerts playing Pink Floyd. But yeah, so it was really kind of a great positive community experience for me to be embraced by the Pink Floyd fans. Obviously, I think that was really much easier once it was on the official Pink Floyd page. Like it's almost like an endorsement in a way that I think once it's approved by the group itself, like then people will anyway like it. Like, you know what I mean? There's also totally. That like confirmation bias.
Yeah, they have signed off on it, and therefore it must be good, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're interesting human beings. Like, it's really hard for a lot of people to actually judge whether a piece of music is good or not. And I think in big cities or like, big cities, I would say there is a more intelligent crowd, only because I think it's like a melting pot, and there's so much diversity in those big cities that people move there from all around the world, and I think they attract like a specific group of people who are more open to new things. That's my theory. So whenever I play something that is more experimental, I think it's received well. Although I don't want to like assume that's not the case. I think it's just the easiness of like okay, I'll just give you an example. Like, if I make a mistake on stage, I think they will know in a big city versus in a small city. I don't know. That has been my experience somehow. Like, I've seen a lot of performers that are performing, and let's say they're terribly performing in one city, and then people are still really clapping, and they're like, "Wow, that was amazing!" Like, not knowing actually that it was a bad performance. Versus, I think you cannot pull that off in a big city where there's like all these prestigious concert halls and like the standard is really high. So that from the classical perspective, I'm saying. So it's interesting for me to experience those things too. But the audience everywhere is amazing, I gotta say. But just for these like technical stuff, like it's interesting to like there were instances, for example, like I would work on a piece of music for 6 months, and it's really sophisticated and really hard to play. But then I wouldn't be understood by the audience, and then I would play something more commercial, like for 2 minutes, that I composed in like 2 hours, and then they would be going nuts for it. And I'm like, how is this like? Why? Like, it's kind of frustrating when you're like the effort that you put on working so hard on a specific music is not being appreciated versus like something more pop sounding, more commercial, just gets more attention. I have been finding that all my life, basically.
Well, effort definitely does not equal artistic value. Often I feel like putting time and effort into something can be detrimental, because if you put a lot of time and effort into something, and in the first place it wasn't necessarily like the right thing to do for that song, but now you've invested 10 hours into it, you're almost never going to delete that part because you've now invested some of your unrenewable time
Right.
into this thing. Versus sometimes, yeah, you do the thing in 2 hours and it just comes together because you were just on the right track the whole time for that piece of music and doing like all of the natural things that made sense for that piece of music. And you put less effort in, but like as a piece of music or, you know, something that resonates with people, it definitely like can have more value for sure.
Yeah, but not everything has to resonate, you know, for it to have actually artistic value. I don't agree with that at all. Like, I think there's a lot of really sophisticated music that you would need to really learn what's going on to appreciate, especially for the contemporary stuff that I talked about. Like, I wouldn't necessarily maybe want to hear it on, but like once I dig into it, then it's really like you have to learn more. So you have to
Well,
be,
I'm just talking about like if you're playing that piece of music to a bunch of fans, like
right.
at an audience hall, and you can't expect them
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
learn everything about like Liszt's career.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
But
it's a
well,
big
so
ask.
yeah, absolutely. So I actually try it's so if you come to my shows, it's really like a stand up in a way. Like, so I try to apply a lot of the stand up or like monologues from stand up shows to my performances. So I actually break down the piece before I play, and then I talk through them. So I say, okay, guys, like this is what this right hand is doing at this point, and this is what the response is, let's say in the middle voice, and then that repeats in the bass, and it's like, let's say a husband and wife having a fight or something. Like, I like associate it with things that they can really relate to too. So like, I guess like that's what I learned is that if you're giving a piece of information, exactly what you said, like you can't expect them to already know it. And a lot of the classical venues, I think, assumed that the people would come and read the program notes, and program notes were so boring for a lot of the times. Like they describe like what the music is doing, like, oh, a slow introduction of the strings, and then the timpani comes with an abrupt dramatic thing. I mean, it's like, okay, you're hearing that, but like, why should I care, right? Like, there is that whole like messaging that wasn't delivered well. I think that was causing a lot of classical venues to have economic crisis. I think people really want to know, like like the technicalities, like, and I think that's why people are so super interested in making of and progress videos online too. I think we assumed that they would be interested, but actually, like, people have been asking me to, for example, post my practice videos. I'm like, why would you ever want to hear me practice? Like, that's such a weird thing to ask. But then they're like, they want to know how your brain works. I think it's such an interesting thing. They want to know what took you there and what steps did you have to take. And so I often now explain like how I grew up and like why did I choose that piece and like what was my first experience with the piece and like why is it so special, and then what happens really like with the notes and the whole compositional elements. So you're absolutely right, and I think the delivery of a lot of the music wasn't done well in the right way. Yeah.
Yeah, there's an artist that I really like. They go by the name Orteka. They make all of their music using a program called Max MSP, which is like a node-based programming thing. It's like basically like writing code to make their music. And yeah, they would give PowerPoint presentations at the start of their performances to be like, all of our stuff is being generated on the spot right here. And the instrument, quote unquote, that we're playing is we're messing with the code as the music is being generated to generate in different ways and stuff like that. And I think if they had not done that, a lot of people at the shows would have just been like, this is literally just noise.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah.
So having done work with both classical music and contemporary rock music, do you think there is a fundamental difference in how both of those genres express emotions? And if so, what is that?
I think rock music relates to more like romantic and post-romantic eras, definitely, because like the melodies are very important and the message is very important. I really like rock music. It's just like deep, you know. There is like there's this communal aspect of it, like uniting people, and it's like it gives people inspiration and a feeling of belonging. And I think that might not be the case for the current songs that I've seen. I'm a very like I think like millennium, like kind of like 2000s, that was kind of the end of music for me. It's just like the type of music I enjoyed like kind of died. I think it's more because people are very self-centered and because of social media too, like everybody's just about themselves, and like the community aspect I think we lost. But that's just my opinion. Maybe it'll change, or maybe I haven't seen the right ones. But I think we have definitely this sort of romantic idealism, you know, of making the world a better place, or relating to people, or like expressing themselves without being afraid, and you know, classical music is all about that, really. Like it's really there's so many different energies in it. Like people assume it's sleeping music, and like that's like not even true at all. Like if you hear like a Prokofiev concerto and like, or a Shostakovich symphony, or I mean, there's like parts that are like more intense than hard rock or heavy metal.
Well,
Like
I feel like this happens for electronic music too, right? Like people just go, oh, it's just a 4/4 kick drum that just goes boom, boom,
yeah,
boom,
right.
boom, and like I think that's what happens if you like just look at the surface level of it. If you like don't look into it at all, then yeah, I could see how you would have that interpretation.
I still yet need to discover like sophisticated electronic music. I think there were a few things. I think it was like Square Pusher.
Yeah, Square Push is insane.
Yeah. So like, but I think the general public, it's because whatever is more popular, it becomes somehow the brand of the genre, which is not great.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the cause. So I would love to actually hear your recommendations on like really complex electronic music. Definitely.
Yeah, like melodically or rhythmically complex, or both.
Both can be different, and also compositionally, definitely crazy stuff. I would love to hear.
Well, a lot of electronic music, in my opinion, some of the best stuff that I really love is compositionally very simple, but the depth of it comes from the sound design and just like the articulation of it, and like the perfection of like the mix down and stuff like that. And also just like if it has just a really nice, simple, like good melody, but they've just like served it up in such a satisfying way. Like that's the kind of stuff that I look for usually.
Interesting. Okay. So you're more into the details of how like the production process, right? Like the mixing, mastering.
That, and also just like the finesse and the execution of the general musical idea. And I kind of like simple songwriting. To me, like simple stuff is like strong songwriting, and often when like something is too melodically or rhythmically overcomplicated, I see it as kind of like weak songwriting. Like it's no longer a song, it's more like like you're saying, like a lab, like a science experiment or something.
Yeah.
Which it can also be insanely cool if it's done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll send you some of the crazy stuff written by classical composers, so you'll enjoy, I think.
Yeah, I would love to do a music trade with you. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and yeah, it was great to chat and meet you. And where should people find you?
Oh yeah, if they search for AD Pianist on their social platforms, like A as in alpha, D as in delta, like those are my initials, AyseDeniz, and a pianist. adpianist.com is my website, and then AD Pianist for Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all those things. I haven't yet shared much of the new projects yet, just because I feel like I want to first develop it within the tech communities. But I will be releasing a few videos soon, so they can see them. Yeah.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was great to chat with you.
Likewise.